talk about, so Martin, we'll just do you first, because obviously, you know, you've built the business around this whole ecosystem, and you've gone through a number of phases of change. So, I mean, when we talk about customization, well, what exactly are we talking about here in terms of, like, is it technology, is it positioning? How would you define what you're doing in this space and how it relates to customization?
I think most people initially and immediately think about customization as a technology thing. I think we came to the technology platform we did from the idea of the strategies we wanted to execute for the advertisers we work for. We started off using off-the-shelf technology to do that.
When you were an AppNexus customer, is that right?
Yeah, and we still are, but I think more and more we found, you know, we've got a smart team. This is all we do. So we don't buy search, we don't buy any direct kind of guaranteed display. And what we found was that we couldn't do the things that we wanted to do with the off-the-shelf platforms, and that they're built as a lowest common denominator. You have the ability to trade in real time with the off-the-shelf platforms, but the smarter stuff we wanted to do, we found we couldn't do that. So we started to build pieces of technology ourselves. And actually, you need to be careful about customization, about what it really is, because for some people that might just be having a reporting suite where they can see things that are relevant to them. But for other brands and other people, that might mean, you know, a custom algorithm that powers their buying. So as we've developed over the last 5 years, we've built out more and more pieces of technology, but it's all around supporting the needs of our clients and how they want to trade. So we've come from I think a different place on customization.
And Shane, you've obviously, the core of your business is building custom technology for various clients globally. I mean, how do they work with you, and how do they try to differentiate themselves? Is it a case of, you know, we'll build our own bidder, or is it a case of building our own customized tech, and what does that mean for them in terms of competitive advantage?
So I think Martin has actually touched on a very important topic, which is defining exactly what customization is before we sort of decide whether it's a good or a bad thing. And I think, you know, our view is that there are very few companies out there who can conceive some absolutely killer business model or, you know, business goals on behalf of an advertiser if you're an agency, sort of ahead of getting into the game. So I think it's imperative that perhaps people who have not sort of experimented with programmatic to date actually get into the game and do the basics well. Does it mean that customization is a bad thing or, you know, very risky? Absolutely not. But I think it's a very, our experience is it needs to be a very iterative process. It needs to sort of come from those organic conversations that you have with your customers, understand what the actual business requirement is, and then the key to success is actually implementing that feature set or the changes in your feature set based on that real sort of feedback, that real business need.
Susanna, you've got an interesting background. You know, you've worked for a ad network, numerous ad networks. You've worked for an exchange, and now you work for a data solutions provider. I mean, how important do you think now the customization piece is going to be going forward? Now, a lot of people are using similar platforms. How important do you think in terms of competitive advantage will that be for independent players or even trading desks or even ad networks for that matter?
I think from a competitive advantage, if you can talk to your customer as one instead of 1 million, you know, that immediately puts you ahead of the game. In terms of platforms, where I sit now with BlueKai, what we really provide is the sort of infrastructure layer that enables customization to happen, and that's all around the ability to activate data. So when we think of customization, and Kieran, you mentioned sort of multiple platforms, but we think about it right across the whole sort of consumer journey, end to end. So whether it's in site optimization, whether it's in search, whether it's in CRM, whether it's in display, or sort of think of it in another way, paid, owned, and earned. So across paid media, obviously, in display, in mobile, in video, in your owned media, so you're wanting to customize the experience of your site recommendation engines, e-commerce, and then, you know, from a social perspective as well, you're wanting to be able to customize that. So I think it's really important to drive a relevant message wherever you can in that digital touch point influence and change that communication.
James, you have an interesting company. You've released some code, and it's almost like an open source where you take the code and build your own bidder, and you obviously add the infrastructure layer. Are we seeing the end of the sort of off-the-shelf solution and more sort of moving into this open source process now? I mean, you've had a lot of traction here in France and Europe.
Sure.
I mean, you've seen a sea change at the minute.
Sure. We kind of saw the open sourcing of a bidder platform as a bit inevitable within the industry. At the end of the day, when you have something like a real-time exchange, 90% of the software required to connect to that exchange and make a purchase is identical for every bidder. So it really ultimately makes no sense for everybody to build their own plumbing, if you will, or software infrastructure. Where the customization lies is around the edges. As Susanna was mentioning, data really kind of starts with data. As an optimization company, we happen to think that customization of the optimization and the buying algorithms is very, very important. Customization of the reporting and the insights is also important, but all of that can sort of function around the edges of a common platform like RTBKit.
Martin, there's been quite a lot of talk from the bigger players saying that this is immaterial. Bid logic is just, it can be, you know, it's what you do with it and the data behind it. I mean, what would you say to that? I mean, from a man who went out and built his own tech layer, I mean, how would you respond to that?
I think it's a load of rubbish, to be honest.
Well, you would say that, wouldn't you?
So what we've seen from the start is that, you know, this technology is a real facilitating technology, and it gives you the opportunity to target, you know, individuals and to target people with a vast amount of data behind it. But, you know, the actual output of all the trading that goes on is the same crappy ads as people normally see, and there's no thought or strategy behind it. So algorithms are important, but what about an understanding of what people are trying to do? Mm-hmm. I don't think you can have an algorithm, it might pick the right audience, but it's definitely not going to form your strategy or show someone the right message, per se. And that's what we see the technology as facilitating. It's just facilitating the strategies that people come up with for advertisers, as opposed to just a black box algorithm, which I think a lot of the businesses in the space are. And we just don't think that's the future.
Did you feel that you could do a lot more by building your own piece of tech, basically? You know, the deeper integrations with clients. You know, your model seems to be moving away from. Well, no offense, but you are kind of, as you said yourself, an ad network with an ear to begin with. But now
How dare you?
ad network with an ear. It's not true. But I'm just saying, your model now is much more consultative type of thing, where you have deeper integrations with clients and more, you know, basically on the data sets effectively, and do a lot more.
Clients own the insight, they own the audience, they own the data, and we're about helping them unlock that for use in the real-time space. So we consider, you know, a lot of the time they're driving the strategy, and we're just providing a technology layer that facilitates them to communicate with their, you know, current and future customers in a better way. And I don't think a lot of the off-the-shelf tech really facilitates that at the moment. And that's the journey of our technology development. You know, first we built a data management infrastructure, then we decided we need to own the algorithmic layer as well, to query and read customer data from advertisers, and that led us to building a bidder as well. And there's a reporting suite that we've got that allows people to see the results they want to see.
Which gives you kind of a competitive advantage over a lot of your
We're
peers.
specialists. I mean, and that's not right for everyone. But for certain businesses that have lots of data, I think that's an attractive offer, and that's why we built a sweet spot for ourselves.
Yeah. Shane, do you think that the world needs millions of bidders? Is it actually, you know, I know you've built some kind of solution that would have to integrate a lot of this, but is it having all these bidders? Is there an integration issue? You think that it's going to complicate things rather than improve things?
Being completely honest, I'm not sure if the world needs, you know, millions. Or, do you say millions or thousands?
Well, I was using that in a relative term. Okay, 1,000 bidders or 10,000 bidders, as opposed to millions. Although I'm building one myself.
I still think customization means very different things depending on who you are. You know, if you're playing the pure arbitrage game, you know, which traffic you're buying is essentially important, and you know, you can say that, you know, what traffic you listen to and the system you use to do that is, in a sense, customizing how you buy media. For the ATD who are worried about losing, a major global client because they can't drive enough brand awareness, a much deeper sort of level of customization is required in that instance. Something like injecting CRM data into the bid decision in a clever way. To come back to your actual question, I think connecting, as sort of customization does become more popular and more acquired, both on sell and buy side, I think integration with supply sources and demand sources is a critical issue, which is where we've obviously tried recently to bring our value to bear with our bid switch solution.
Susanna, Martin obviously touched on the whole importance of data, and I'm just curious to know, obviously your perspective on it, but do you think the DMP or some sort of intelligent data warehouse solution is going to be sort of the real driver of customized trading, buying, etc.? Having that piece of technology is important for a competitive advantage, effectively.
So I think the fact that data powers customization means that you need really to have platforms that enable you to manage that data. And it's beyond just the management, it's also about the data activation. But I think it really starts with, to be able to truly customize, you need to have a global view of the user you're trying to connect with. And that means not just using your digital data, being able to bring offline data, bring all of the data touch points that you have into one central place, so you can have and start to build one holistic understanding of that customer. And then there's the opportunity to layer on other data sources, third-party, second-party data sources, so you can know more about your user than you initially had. And from there, you can start to make sort of informed decisions as to how then you want to customize. And based on where that consumer is in their sort of decision process or the customer life cycle, you can start to apply different tactics to target and message or remessage or even suppress messaging to that user. But I think data very much sits at the heart of it, and being able to activate that data is really important, because it's one thing being able to bring the data in and have just the insights on that user, but if you can't then push that data out, and again, push it out across all channels, so customize your advertising as well as your landing pages, as well as your search activity with that same information, I think that's really important.
Do you think it's a defining factor, though, in competitive advantage, effectively? The data piece. I mean, we see a lot of companies coming into the space now, like Amazon and Rakuten and all these guys who've got plenty of first-party data. Does that make them, they have the competitive advantage, effectively? And then at the end of the day, is it the data that actually defines how good you are, rather than the technology?
I think it's a combination of the two, because you need to be able to activate that data. So if you don't have the technology, if you don't have the connections into the ecosystem, then it sort of just sits in a tomb. But I think the data is very important. As you said, there's lots of companies coming into the space. I've been enrolled for 2 months, and it's just unbelievable. It's like someone flicked the switch. The amount of demand there is for sort of DMP platforms, it's really outstanding. So I think companies are really getting their head around the value they have in their data. Some of the big players already do that to varying degrees. So yeah, I think data sits at the heart of it, and being able to leverage that data with companies like James runs, to be able to really model that data and build those finite segments, and then to be able to action them is the sweet spot.
James, we sort of live in a world of stacks at the minute. You've got the Google stack and the AppNexus stack and the Rubicon stack. I know it's publisher side, but they're all trying to build a stack. Do you think we're going to see more of the type of thing you were doing, which is sort of open source? Like we had OpenX, which had open source code, and then obviously yourselves. But are we going to see more of this happening, where people take tech, build it themselves, as opposed to, here's the keys to, my big dumper truck, go and take and do what you need to do with it?
Well, I think that for anyone to build their own, let's say, buy-side technology, those big platforms that you mentioned are absolutely essential. The idea of trying to somehow go around Google, AppNexus, or Rubicon is pretty much impossible, because you need those big platforms and all of that massive infrastructure to aggregate all of that supply, make it addressable. And you've seen this in other industries. If you look at travel, for example, as travel inventory was more and more traded on real-time exchanges, buyers and sellers just come much closer together. and middlemen tend to drip away. And so you saw it with travel agents, and you'll probably see it in our ecosystem with some of the people who sit in the middle. So I think those platforms, you'll probably see a certain amount of consolidation there. I don't know if there's room for 15 of them. There might be room for 6 or 7 of them eventually.
Could you name the 6 or 7 later on over beers?
But there's a lot of inventory in the world that needs to be made addressable to real-time bidding. With display inventory, we're just getting started. I think ultimately publishers will benefit. To get to your question earlier about does the world need 1 million bidders, the more bidders, the more bid density, the higher the CPMs. And ultimately that will be better for publishers, and you'll see more and more inventory become addressable, and more different types of inventory become addressable. I think that search will be traded on RTB mechanics one day.
Well, why isn't search traded already? I kind of find out.
I think because the big incumbent players in search don't necessarily need it to be traded that way today. But one day that's probably going to change. And you're starting to see search open up a little bit. People are able to retarget on search now. People are able to target audiences a little bit more. So more and more, I think you'll see that start to move toward the same mechanics that we see with display advertising.
Martin, would you sorry, Sally.
No, I was just going to add to your point on stacks, because this is where it can become a challenge for customization, because you want to build one specific user segment and then be able to target those within each of those environments. And so one of the trends that we're seeing is actually marketeers really stepping away and taking a more broader ownership of their data and bringing the data out of those individual platforms and owning it themselves, so that they can then go in and execute it and build customization into every individual platform rather than having it locked in stack by stack.
Interested, Martin. Do you think that the open source thing is going to be, would that suit you to have that sort of open source technology available to build this out, or is it not really a concern of yours at all?
I think open source is helpful. And I agree that the bidder layer is the commodity layer. I mean, I think we built a bidder for 2 reasons. One, frankly, is a cost reason. So it's cheaper for us to run our own bidder once you get to a certain scale. But then the second reason for that was just owning the decisioning, so the algorithmic piece, and open source is a great way to start. The bidder it was very quick for us to build a bidder actually, but the infrastructure that sat behind it wasn't so quick.
That's the complicated part.
It was the complicated part, yeah. So it's a great solution to open source some of it, but there's tons more that goes into the whole decisioning piece than just the bidder. The bidder's a dumb piece of technology.
Yeah.
And we're just experimenting. Everyone's experimenting still. I think you forget how young this industry is.
Shane, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, just to sort of complement what's already been said, I think it goes without saying that IPONWeb are big fans of open source technology. I mean, we're here because of an open source standard, and we have Google and others to thank for that. But I'd second Martin's point, by the way, that the infrastructure piece and the heavy lifting machines essentially inside bidders and SSPs and so on, those are the bits that are really, really tough, And I'm not sure I would necessarily sort of recommend reinventing the wheel to anybody. But we, for the customizable piece, if that's what you want to call it, we took a very conscious design decision when we brought forward our component set, which was, build those heavy lifting machines, make them, very scalable, very powerful. Everything that's customizable, we've brought forward an open source facility in order to be able to customize your algorithm, your bidding logic, your pacing, all that good stuff.
So, I mean, I'll stay with you, because obviously you'll have a lot of conversations with these fine French people later on. But I'm just wondering, who is best placed to build this layer of customization? Are we talking about the agency, the holding agencies? Is it the ad networks who are trying to change up, or is it consultancy layers like the likes of Accenture, et cetera? I mean, who do you see as the ones who are really pushing this type of customization? I mean, from your own perspective. Who's best placed to do it, actually?
I don't think there's a straightforward answer to that question. As I mentioned earlier, I think there are very different sort of types of customization possible within a trading stack. If you have a system, for example, that can accept new input signals for probability modeling or prediction, then that's very powerful. And in order to be able to do that, you need a solid stack which has a degree of flexibility, but ultimately deciding which things to change, which bits to customize, anyone can do that. And to my earlier point, you need to be in the field, sort of slogging through deal after deal or budget after budget, looking at the monthly figures to understand, has this worked? If it hasn't worked, what's important is that you can actually bring forward these changes in a very sort of fast time frame, which makes a rapid sort of development environment, I would say, crucial.
There's a lot of experimentation actually going on as to who owns the customization and who's responsible. So as an example, we have one DMP client where the client adds in the first-party segmentation and they build some layer of customization. That then goes over to the agency. The agency layers on third-party data and campaign insights and adds to that customization. And then it goes to the trade desk, and the trade desk actions it. So there are a lot of handoffs around the customization piece. So there's a lot of need for sort of people right across the chain to understand and know what they're doing.
Martin, are you seeing a push from your clients, like the marketers, around this? We want to do this, this, and this, that you weren't able to do on your off-the-shelf solutions, like clever stuff. I mean,
I think one of the biggest challenges we have, I think we sit on the more advanced end of the scale, is that our clients want to do it themselves. I mean, most of them do search in-house and have a real expertise in that. And they would like to do this themselves at some point. It makes sense to them. They built teams already that do their own search, but...
Does that put you in a bit of a quandary as to your usefulness? Like, if the client decides to bring it in-house, Martin Kelly's Infectious despite being Deloitte and Touche's top-growing company, may have to get a new line of work.
But that's, I think if you can't stay ahead of your clients, then you may as well go home anyway. So, and that's why we developed our own tech. The beauty of this space compared to search is that search is like
owned by one company.
And that's actually good for display, because perfect information search, your insurance company, everyone's bidding on that term, car insurance, because everyone knows it's there. There's a ton of data signals, and they can be stuff you get on a bid request, and they can be stuff you get from an advertiser's first-party data, and you can crunch that in your own way and everyone's making a different decision on why to buy and what to pay for it and what ad to show. And it's that layer of advice and customization that I think keeps us ahead of our clients for now, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we've got 5 minutes left. I'm just going back to jump back to James. I mean, obviously, all the big platforms like Google and AppNexus and MediaOcean are trying to build, and MediaMath are trying to build out open APIs so their clients don't go to the likes of you or OpenWeb to ask them to build this, that, and the other. Do you think that's more likely to happen? You're going to see platforms evolve with open APIs, and is that potentially a threat to you and sort of this customization piece, or is that part of the solution maybe?
No, I mean, we're counting on that to happen. We already have clients using Google Open Bidder, for example. We have clients who've built proprietary bidding stacks. There's no obligation in our part to build on RTB kit or anything like that. We just offer it as one sort of additional solution. So there's no question that the big platforms will open up more and more because it's being demanded by the agencies and by the clients. They want to get more data in there. A big piece that's missing right now are for agencies and advertisers to be able to use their own attribution models to drive optimization decisions. There's a lot of situations where either DSPs or ad networks are optimizing toward their own version of the attribution. And that's taking something that's traditionally been in the hands of the agencies for decades, right? So that's a demand that we hear all the time now, which is we've got an attribution model. We want to use that attribution model to drive optimization decisions. Certainly something we facilitate. We've built our platform to be able to handle that. And so we're counting on those bigger platforms opening up and allowing deeper integrations.
Shane, do you think that's the route that they're going on? We'll have a bunch of platforms, maybe 5 or 6, that will have that level of sort of openness?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm not sure we're sort of deep enough into the game yet to make that type of call. But I think we send lots and lots of prospects away every day over to MediaMath, to Rubicon, to the big players in the space, because we understand that organizationally they are essentially not ready to customize themselves. So they genuinely don't understand what the need is for customization. And that's fine, because in very many cases they will have very healthy businesses. I think it's a function of how quickly you can recognize a need in your customer to change what you're doing. And if it's a big enough need, then yes, come to speak with us, and we'll figure out a way to change how it is you're buying media or how it is you're monetizing data, impressions, whatever it might be on the sell side.
Yeah.
There's still a massive lack of expertise as well in the industry, and everyone, we were with one of the big global, the stacks you were talking about, and we were talking about their reporting API, and we were asking them questions. Actually, no one has ever asked us any questions about that part of the business. And I think there's a lot of lip service paid to technology and customization without a real understanding of how to do it or what the technology is that actually sits behind it.
I mean, that's coming back to my next question. I mean, the last question today was that, does it really affect real advertising, all this innovation? Does it actually make things better for the user?
I think absolutely yes, because before now, RTB has basically allowed us to get closer than ever to the user, which is what advertising is all about. Yes, there are businesses who take advantage of trading possibilities within programmatic and who are not necessarily interested in that, but they're very much in the minority. And I think ultimately OpenRTB and what's possible with accessing the user in real time, at runtime if you like, with intelligent decisions, there's absolutely no comparison.
Susanna, I'll leave the last word to you, being the lady of the panel. You're gonna set the tone for the rest of the day.
So I'll leave everybody with a stat then. So some smart bots in some US universities recently did a study on the data-driven marketing economy, and they valued it at 160 billion. And cutting that down, they valued just retargeting alone at 37 billion. So
sorry, retargeting
retargeting.
at 37 billion.
Yeah.
Jesus, I'm in the wrong game.
Industry. So I think is it making a difference? I think if that much money is being spent into it, yes. If we look at just what Blue Kite does, we work with half of the Fortune top 30 businesses. And I was actually reviewing this with our SVP of product, and he said that over the last 2 years, the actual usage of data-driven marketing and their usage of data in their advertising has massively increased, and it's actually grown threefold what those companies now use for. So I would say, yeah, it's absolutely having a positive impact.
Well, Susanna, thanks.
Happy days, we're here to stay.
Absolutely, it's champagne stuff at the minute, it's just all drink ourselves stupid. So Susanna, thanks very much. Gentlemen, thank you. And if you want to talk to any of these fine people at the bar later on, they're happy to talk about customization, or they'll build you a bidder, or they'll tell you how it's done, or they'll build you a DNP. It's great stuff. All right, thanks guys.
Thank you.
And then we'll go for a break, so we'll see you in 20 minutes.